When I think back to playing the video games that come from a series I love, it reminds me of eating at one of my favorite restaurants. You may know what to expect, but that's okay. However, sometimes games need to change up their formula. With a change that can potentially flip everything on its head, all that's left to be done is to ask yourself if you're ready to face this change. And most importantly, could you withstand an item with no cheese? Oh my goodness, man. It has been a while since I've been in this room. Oh man, how have you guys all been? I mean, since we're here, that can only mean one thing. We're gonna have a nice, relaxing gaming discussion. And what better game to speak about than another SpongeBob game? The SpongeBob SquarePants franchise has been a juggernaut of a series since 1999. However, back when the show was only 5 years out from that initial release date, they were already putting out a high-budget, fully fledged movie titled the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. As a kid, SpongeBob was a very big deal for me. So when I saw commercials of a movie coming out, I was so excited, and the marketing made that excitement boost even higher. When it came out on DVD, I would watch it so many times it would just get scratched, and it would basically be impossible to watch the movie at certain points. However, video games were that main source of enjoyment for me. They were really the outlet for me to express my appreciation and really get immersed into the world. When it comes to me though, I actually didn't beat this game right away when it came out. It took me a couple of years. And that's because of the main stigma this game carries, is how difficult it is. And that might sound crazy when recognizing the source material, but that made it so much more interesting to me to want to talk about. And before I go any further with this topic, I just want to get something out of the way. The subject of difficulty is a difficult discussion to have, since there are going to be parts of the game that I find difficult that you may not, and vice versa. So just going forward, I want to make sure that what I'm saying isn't supposed to be taken as what the definitive experience is. This is just some guy talking. But that discussion will have to wait, as right now we have a poor fellow that has a situation with his sandwich.
I can't believe this is happening here! It's horrible! Thank Neptune, my manager's here!
And with that cinematic opening shot, we finally begin our adventure. Similar to a lot of SpongeBob games at the time, this is a 3D platformer, which means that this opening level is going to teach us all of the basics. You have your general movement options, but also the environment that you're going to be performing all these actions in. And what better way to show off the impact of the environment than with the enemies? Each enemy we fight going forward will first be shown off with a nice little introductory cutscene, which is kicked off with the SpongeBob classic, the jellyfish. Defeating enemies is one of the ways you can gain this game's type of currency, the manliness points. These points also come in a variety of different values, which is each represented by a different type of weight. Although if that battle with the enemy left you feeling a little wrung out, you may want to search for a Krabby Patty to take a bite of, which represents the health points in this game. To make all of this happen though, you need to learn how to attack, and at this point in the game, SpongeBob only has one, which are his signature karate karate gloves to perform a karate spin. This attack can not only hurt enemies, but also help yourself stall in the air for a little bit and press buttons to manipulate terrain. And speaking of terrain, this level does not waste any time showing off this game's flair. We have cop cars everywhere, sirens blaring, lights shining, helicopters flying throughout the level. Go, SpongeBob! As we travel deeper into the level, we begin to see these wooden crates with Plankton plastered on them, proudly presenting the letter Z, which is interesting, as we haven't heard about this in the game yet. I wonder what it has to do with the story. As we break through a wall of wooden boxes, we bounce over police cars flooded with crowds of people to finally make it to the scene of the crime. Not without first being rewarded the main collectible of the game, the Goofy Goober token. After saving the day with a dose of dairy, it turns out it was merely a dream of SpongeBob wanting to become the manager. It turns out the Krusty Krab is actually revealing a new manager for the new restaurant, the Krusty Krab 2. After overhearing the success, Plankton turns to his final plan in his alphabetical repertoire, the dreaded Plan Z. It turns out SpongeBob's dream was all for nothing, as Squidward is named the new manager of the Krusty Krab 2. And as he leaves distraught, the narrator tells us that SpongeBob is off to drown his depression in ice cream. Wait, drown his depression?
Hey buddy, come on, wake up.
Huh? Where am I?
It's 8 in the morning, closed. Go collect your friend and get out of here.
Ooh, we got a Patrick level going on now, alright.
Unfortunately, this early in the game, there isn't really much different in terms of controlling SpongeBob or Patrick.
Being in the home of the Goofy Goober though, there are some enemies that are going to be popping out from behind the shadows, as we are introduced to the Fogger and Slammer enemies, two aggressive enemies with two methods of attack. The Foggers are big boys with big breath, while the Slammers, you made them stay extra long at work, so they're gonna take that broom and clean you up.
This aggression is further enhanced when you meet up with the spawner.
The spawner, well, spawns enemies, so their job is just to make more headaches for you. As you're exploring the interior of the Goofy Goober, you come across this mystical clamshell, and opening it reveals to you a woman named Mindy. Now, I'm not familiar with the game introducing us to this character yet, however, she tells us that there's Goofy Goober tokens needed to unlock a new move, and that is when you turn around to see a glowing platform. Upon entering this sub-level, we are introduced to the Combat Arena Challenge. With massive plankton robots off in the distance, they act as a spawner to spawn in many different enemies. And the name of the game is just to beat them all. After defeating this challenge, you're rewarded with a Goofy Goober token.
So this challenge was a way to let players know that in some levels, it's possible to obtain multiple Goofy Goober tokens.
Upon exiting this level, we return to the mysterious Mindy, and she grants us with our new move, the cartwheel. This cartwheel is a beautiful attack, because not only is it a continuous attack, but it also allows Patrick's ground speed to be quicker, which is only going to help us with the final battles and platforming challenges of this level. The ending, though, always kind of confused me. I don't know where we are. We're just kind of in a room, and that's the ending. Alright. As we learned in the previous level, Plankton stole the very powerful King Neptune's crown. Now we realize that Plankton placed the blame on Mr. Krabs, so King Neptune believes it and freezes Mr. Krabs. Luckily, King Neptune mercifully allows SpongeBob and Patrick 6 days to retrieve his crown back. We also learned that Mindy, that mysterious clamshelled girl, is King Neptune's daughter, and she's going to be helping us retrieve the crown. A crown that lays far away in a city of shells. All that's left is a way to get there, and that brings us to our paddy wagon. An oversized sandwich rocking a fuel injector french fryer with dual overhead grease traps. Yeah. Wow.
Ooh, and the developers knew what was cooking too, as the entirety of the next level is dedicated to handling this monster.
SpongeBob, Patrick, it's time to start your journey. Drive the paddy wagon through Bikini Bottom to the edge of town.
What a relaxing atmosphere to start this journey off on as we drive through the Bikini Bottom streets, the park, these little fountains where you slide across the water, or just notice those little details like the sea needle or this Plankton statue. Huh. It's all just so calming.
Or at least on the surface it would seem that way, but in reality, there's a lot going on here.
There are piles of dirt everywhere, bulldozers breaking through buildings, and don't get me started on the wrecking balls. There's a lot going on here. Bikini Bottom must be going through construction or something. While that may sound pretty imposing, in all honesty, the maps for the driving levels are usually pretty open, which means that there's a lot of room to work with in terms of what's heading your way.
And this also helps because it's a paddy.
It's big, it's round, it's not gonna be the smoothest vehicle to move, but again, because the levels are so open, you don't really get too frustrated by it, or at least I didn't. So the drive can be a smooth one that you could really take at your own pace. And if that relaxing drive isn't what you're going for, there's also these nitro pickups on the ground. These nitro pickups give you a huge boost if you really want to go for some speed or some shortcuts, whatever you're looking for. Although, I have no idea what this is supposed to be referencing, so if any of you guys could let me know what this is supposed to be, please let me know. They do help out a lot though, and it makes this final jump right before the finish line really enjoyable. These levels are great. It's a wonderful way to break up the platforming levels and a nice little breather before all the other challenges that are going to be coming our way. But even though we're kicking back on a drive, back in Bikini Bottom, a lot of stuff is starting to go down at the chum bucket. Plankton is now using the recipe he stole from Mr. Krabs while he was frozen to sell his own Krabby Patties. And that Plankton statue wasn't just for show, no, all of that construction is now happening because Plankton now runs Bikini Bottom, with every citizen being controlled with a chum bucket helmet. After the narrator explains to us how we were robbed of a playable Squidward campaign, we go back to SpongeBob and Patrick on the road, passing a couple locals, and getting their paddy wagon stolen. To begin this on-foot journey to Shell City, we have to make our way through a desolate desert. Although, desolate may not be the best way to describe it, as it is filled with these mysterious radio towers.
Plankton is using those radio towers to broadcast his evil messages across the sea. SpongeBob, you have to find a way to shut those towers down.
What I really love is that this is just the Fogger enemy again, or the Slammer, but they've been reskinned to fit with the level's aesthetic. Just wonderful attention to detail there.
So once you feel like you have everything you need, the game, of course, throws a new enemy at you.
These are the Flingers, and they will single-handedly let you know that this game's challenge is going to start ramping up. These enemies attack by spitting at you, the game's first real long-range enemy. This attack not only damages you, but also can stick to the ground for a short amount of time, which will also cause your character to have slippery ice physics, which combine with the platforming around these new steam vents, and you got yourself a challenge going on. But because they're floating around in their inflatable life preservers, you can't jump up and hit them with a simple spin attack, which is where Mindy's Goofy Goober token collection comes in with the bash attack. This attack is a simple punch right above you, which is the perfect attack for the flingers. And when you get that animation where you finally fold them, ooh, that is pure satisfaction right there. Although the flingers and even the slammers are starting to take 2 hits now, and it's only the 4th level, which, man, that's gonna get overwhelming after a while. This game could really benefit with some extra power on your end.
Not giving up manliness.
Luckily, this game has an upgrade system, which takes every single attack of SpongeBob and Patrick and makes it a more powerful version, which can not only give it extra utility, but also deal with enemies a lot easier. When upgraded, SpongeBob and Patrick's spin attack both do more damage and reflect projectiles, which adds some counterplay to the flingers as you can just reflect back their spit at them. But if you want to stick to the more natural way to defeat these enemies, SpongeBob's bash is upgraded to the Macho Bash. The bash transforms from a regular boxing glove to a metal spiked fist that now sticks into a flinger and can be detonated with a timer or by another press of the button that you used to initiate the bash. And you even have the option to upgrade your health as well. And while you're dealing with all of this, the locals just keep popping up and laughing at you. I don't even get why they have to be here, but it's so important. Alright, so this game's story is based on the SpongeBob SquarePants movie.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
But it also relies on the movie in the sense that you kind of need to have watched it to some degree to understand the game's references. But now that I got that out of the way, we gotta go back to this. What? No matter how minute the details I praise are about this game, nothing will ever be more of an accomplishment than the developers knowing that they were not going to make a level with this scene in it, so they went out of their way to make sure that this moment was somehow in the game, fully modeled, cheeks out.
So even though the developers have a really solid piece of source material, there's gonna be some times where they need to take some inspiration of their own.
So besides attacking enemies, the developers get to use this bash power-up to craft a whole level around not only traversing this cacti-filled desert with these wooden posts, but also destroying Plankton's radio towers. Although, even though we saw these towers getting destroyed as a set piece for the ending of the level, those weren't actually the last ones, as the second part of our tower destruction takes place with a slide.
I found one last spot with those ugly Plankton propaganda towers. Use whatever you can find to knock them down.
Similar to the driving levels, the sliding levels are overall a little shorter than your average platforming level. However, the developers do their best to really flesh it out to stand on its own. In a bathtub. I must have missed something. I never understood why they were in a bathtub. Regardless, we gotta rid this desert of Plankton's rule. However, there are no buttons to punch, but there are giant targets for us to crash into. And these targets not only knock out the radio towers, but naturally create paths for us to travel down. And some go as far as to even have boulders crashing into each other, and the towers themselves breaking apart only to form back together again in a different bridge. Ooh, and then the jumps, man. You have to jump from rock to rock. I love knocking into these little balloon boxes just to let the crates fall to the ground. Sometimes you have to jump off the path just to jump on a fallen radio tower. It's such a fun and dynamic level. After making it across the desert, we finally find our stolen paddy wagon. However, like in the movie, the key is missing, which leads our heroes into the bar next to it, the dangerous Thug Tug. Returning to the platforming as Patrick, just like SpongeBob in the level before him, we have a new ability we need to unlock for him. Now it's 10 Goofy Goober tokens, or we can't play the level. Alright, let's see if we can get a couple more, and okay, we are back to our adventure.
You have to get the key to the paddy wagon back.
Patrick's new ability is the
where, you know, they're obviously censoring the word.
But to avoid repetition, it's more commonly known as the smash attack. For the upgraded version, the move is completely flipped on its head. Literally. It now has the ability to stun nearby enemies, which is incredibly helpful, especially when you consider that this level adds the spinner enemy. They're fast, and they don't stop spinning, so if you want to take them out, you have to make sure you time your smash attack quickly. To go along with the spinner is the turret enemy, an enemy exclusively inside a pipe who shoots out rockets at you. Well, hey, maybe for this enemy you could try to use the upgraded cartwheel attack, which now has a larger area of effect.
Having another level that is introducing 2 enemies at a time really does a great job in showing off the tone of how dangerous this place really is.
And that's further shown off with the Thunder Barrel, where if you get too close, it'll explode and not only damage you, but everything around it. You might find yourself needing to swing away from these barrels, and that's where Patrick's tongue swinging comes in. And like, ow?
Although you're not gonna get very far if you keep swinging away. Eventually, you're gonna have to face all of these new platforming challenges the game is throwing at you.
As this level not only introduces falling platforms, but treadmill platforms, so you're gonna have to start quickening the pace in these challenges. There's also platforming across some lava or goo where if you touch it, you'll suffer some knockback if you can make it back to safe ground, but if you can't, that's a one-hit KO. But there are no lives in this game, so it's more so just going to halt your own progress, being saved by the checkpoints scattered around. There really is a lot going on here. I mean, look at Patrick's face. To go along with the enemies evolving with each level, the character animations do as well. It's just so immersive. But while you're only going to be seeing Patrick's animation for now, that doesn't mean SpongeBob doesn't also get some love with the Sponge Ball challenge, which morphs SpongeBob into a ball and requires you to go through an obstacle course with him. I really love these challenges. I especially love it when you could really breeze through them, quickly moving through all of these moving blocks and these breakable platforms. Even though we're having fun here, we do need to get a move on, you know, Mr. Krabs isn't getting any warmer. So we gotta go get that key, and what better way to do that in a bar than with an old-fashioned brawl. And what I really like about this ending is that it takes place where the level also began, completing a nice little loop around the bar and having a natural exit point. Now with the key back, we are ready to continue our journey to Shell City.
The gates are locked. You'll have to find all the keys to unlock the gates.
And that's what makes no weenie parking anytime so much more different than Sandwich Driving 101. You see, in that level, we're just driving out of Bikini Bottom, where in this level, we're doing 3 laps around the same course. And to keep it more interesting, each lap opens up a new path for you to take, which helps in making the level feel much more dynamic and interesting. Although the level doesn't need that much help in that regard, because there are a lot of obstacles that don't want you going anywhere. Right out of the gate, there are these oil puddles across the ground, and if you slip on one, they very conveniently placed a wall of TNT for you to crash into. There are also these tire spikes everywhere, which combined with these obstructed poles can make it pretty difficult to see what's coming next. We then go to the road filled with hot sauce puddles, and this is where the game really lets you know how little invincibility you have on your paddy wagon, as it feels like as soon as you get hit, you are open to take another hit, which can pile up with all of the obstacles around this course.
However, even though this game is stepping up its challenge, it doesn't mean it's losing any of that charm.
A nice little attention to detail is having SpongeBob point out all of the different keys on the road.
There's a key!
As well as crashing into all of these motorcycles or bales of hay, just if you feel like it. So even though you're driving around here, it doesn't mean it doesn't have its own sense of personality. But we finally collected enough keys to now escape the Thug Tug completely.
Patrick, we've got to start acting like men.
SpongeBob.
Now back on the road, the boys come across some free ice cream. But I would have guessed they stopped for some chicken fingers because SpongeBob's getting a little zesty. But this actually introduces us to our first boss level, with our first fight being against the frogfish. Now, naturally as a boss, there's gonna be a large health bar in play, but what's great is that after each section of health is taken off, that acts as a checkpoint for your character to come back to. Luckily, the first phase isn't too crazy, as the frogfish will begin charging at you, but since we have the Chad cartwheel attack, we just need to move out of the way. Once the frogfish teeters over the edge, you simply just give them a little shove. Our next phase has the frogfish standing on the edge of the stage, as he sticks his tongue in the ground, which leads to his tongue, but you know, the old lady, coming in for some action of her own as the frogfish spits a projectile at us. I will say though, I really like how they modeled SpongeBob to be hanging on top of the frogfish. I know that's where he lands in the cutscene, but it's just so charming to see in game. The third phase is essentially the second phase, with the major difference being that instead of using attacks from the slammer enemy, the old lady now uses attacks from the spinner enemy. So you just work around them as if you would be working around the regular enemy, and you should be able to complete this boss fight.
This was a nice little introductory boss. It wasn't anything too crazy, but it does its job in letting players know what they can expect from these types of fights.
So with the paddy wagon now being digested, SpongeBob and Patrick find themselves in front of a major roadblock. Or a lack of road. Not knowing how to continue on, Mindy uses her mermaid magic and her one tail fin to transform the boys into men. Reinvigorated, they waste no time jumping into the trench ahead. You know, I really like this little banter they added in between levels.
Since there's no hub worlds, meaning there's not really a lot of time to take in your surroundings, these cutscenes do a really nice job of giving you that moment to breathe.
Also, it's just great hearing the original voices for these characters interact with each other. In fact, Mindy sounds like her movie voice. Who played her in the movie? Okay.
Although I think we're ignoring the true victory that this game achieves in terms of voice actors.
So, Scarlett Johansson gives us our mission to slide down the deep, dark, dangerous, hazardous, monster-infested trench.
To get to Shell City, you're going to need to cross the bottom of the trench. You can get to the bottom using this slide.
There is so much packed into this level in terms of obstacles, multiple paths you can take, and references to the movie. The stars of this level are the monsters themselves, as some of them pop up for decorations, and others use their insides to let you slide down. Which, you know, isn't the most pretty thing to look at, but the creativity continues to grow with goo balls from its intestines shooting at you as you have to weave left and right to get around them along a path that is filled with TNT. And once you leave the monster's body, the main obstacle in this path shows up with the flipping platforms, with one side housing a bed of spikes as the other side is completely safe. And these platforms are not working overtime with you. It almost feels like the second you have left on the platform before it is when they decide to show their hand. And this level knows what it has here with the way it finishes the level by ending with a 7-row on-the-fly platforming flipping section where you can have up to 3 paths to take with only one of them being safe. It is incredible. So now that we've slid down the trench, it's time to actually explore it. Ooh, I can't wait to get started.
You know, fair enough. It's a new 3D platforming level. You need the Goofy Goober tokens for it. Okay, I could see the pattern here. Alright.
Oh, alright, the slides and the driving challenges both have optional missions. Let's see what they're all about. Now, what's interesting about the Goofy Goober tokens in the driving and sliding levels is that past the original Goofy Goober token, they all share the other objectives for the other tokens. The first of which are the time challenges. Just simple time trials here. They're not too crazy. If you're good enough, you could probably make a couple mishaps and still make it, but the game is still telling you that you need to clean things up a little bit. Alright, that got us a couple Goofy Goober tokens. We should now be able to access the level now that we're men.
This place is full of horrible, hideous, and disgusting monsters. You've got to cross the trench to get to Shell City.
Our level begins with Mindy giving SpongeBob a bowling ball with his new ability, the Sponge Bowl. Just a simple wind up and toss, but if you upgrade it, this bowling ball becomes a giant electrical spiked ball that gives you a bigger area of effect. They also give the ability more use with these Plan Z computers, since you have to be far away or else they'll shrink if you get too close. And a new level means a new enemy with the Popper. Kind of like a mix between the turret and the flinger enemy, since they shoot from far away like the turret, but they also like to stay far away like the flinger. And these monster designs for the enemies are still kept throughout the level theming like from the rock slide before. You start by tongue sliding down a monster's tongue. And then you go a step further to realize that there is another monster living inside that monster's stomach acids. And like, okay.
Although this creativity can lead to a lot of fun visual flair.
Such as intestines being platforms or monsters' teeth being gates.
But what's great is that this level doesn't rely on its visuals to carry diversity of the challenges it can offer.
For example, there's a bungee challenge here, where SpongeBob hooks his pants to a fishing hook and dives in, trying to break some targets. Usually when you finish these challenges, you're thrown next to a cardboard box where if two boxes are opened at once, you can teleport between them. There's also parts where you could switch between the playable characters. So tagging in your buddy in one of these porto heads could lead you to have a nice little Patrick challenge as well.
And while it's fun to switch characters, it's worth mentioning that the level's still mainly structured around whoever you began the level with. And that's usually a good thing because now the game can focus on stepping up its difficulty, and this level is no different.
With not only the addition of the Popper, but the Popper being added together with most of the other previous enemies.
And that's where the magic of this game's difficulty really starts to blend together.
Not only through more difficult platforming challenges, such as the smaller platforms or sinking platforms, but also through its enemies. Not only are there a variety of enemy types, but each enemy type has a different quirk about them that requires a different way of taking them out. So as we see this game's structure slowly becoming more and more alive, let's see how far this game wants to push it as we make our way out of the trench. Leaving the trench brings us to an underwater landfill. Let's see what's in.
Okay, alright, yeah, no. Let's see what other challenges the game can offer us.
Well, we tried out some time challenges in the driving and sliding levels. Let's see what else they have. Ring challenges. Okay, let's see what this is all about.
So, the ring challenges are a bit of a double-edged sword.
You see, the concept here is to drive through rings. However, these rings aren't gonna last forever, as after a couple seconds they'll disappear and you fail the challenge. On one hand, this can add a degree of challenge that wasn't really present there before, such as in Sandwich Driving 101, where the level isn't too obstacle heavy, you now have to add some extra precision. It can also do a great job at showing you some levels shortcuts. But then you have rub-a-dub-dub, slip slide in the tub, where, ooh man, they're gonna take you on some challenging paths, and they're gonna give you some tight turns. And again, these levels aren't super short, so it truly depends on which ring challenge you're doing. Okay, but we did get some Goofy Goober tokens from it, so we can finally play the next level, Shell City, Dead Ahead.
Plankton is using those televisions to brainwash unsuspecting ocean creatures. You must destroy those televisions.
Due to our collection of Goofy Goober tokens up to this point, we are now able to access Patrick's final ability, his throw. This ability allows Patrick to take out enemies from far away, and you can even upgrade it to throw from further away distances. This ability is very necessary to give to Patrick at this point when we are introduced to the Mini-Merv. So the Mini-Merv is more focused on defense, which makes it so that whenever you get close to this enemy, a laser will detect the distance between you and them and zap you if you get too close. You're able to take out the Mini-Mervs with a lot of different tools at your disposal, some of which being the basic throw fruit you'll find around levels, stunned enemies, or the introduction of these more durable boxes, the steel safes.
And what's really great is that the levels really take advantage of the new abilities, which, you know, good. And this level is no different in terms of really taking advantage of the throws.
Throwing is honestly the name of the game with this level, as the main objective is to destroy all the televisions where Plankton is broadcasting his chum bucket helmets.
And the enemies aren't the only challenge here, as part of the puzzle could be just guiding the throw fruit to the television.
You don't want to take too long because there's a timer on the throw fruits. After a while, it'll lose its ripeness and become rotten, so you have to be quick in some cases. And the level crafts a lot of fun puzzles to take advantage of the throws, not only needing the throws to press buttons, but also stacking them on top of each other to reach new heights. To go along with this main objective, though, we also have the floating block challenge in this level. These fun little obstacles courses with a variety of different blocks to jump on. Just a pure platforming challenge, and I really enjoy these. This is actually the last floating block challenge in the game, as you'd play them in earlier levels, and because of that, there's a lot of tricky platforming here.
But if you really want to talk about challenges, we have to return to the main level here for a second. You see, this is Patrick's final dedicated main level, and because of that, when you get to the end of Patrick's final level, the developers want to take everything you've learned up until this point and really put it to the test.
This final section has 2 spawners with 2 Mini-Mervs on the side of one larger platform. And because of the spawners, this larger platform in the middle is going to have a variety of different enemies running at you. But these enemies in the middle need to be stunned in order to take out the spawners, the Mini-Mervs, and these buttons on the side that can help you progress to the next part of the level.
This takes a surprisingly great deal of management, since all the enemies that you're initially fighting are also technically your ammo, so it can put you in these odd situations of where do I even start?
If you take the Mini-Merv out first, the spawner is just going to, well, spawn another one. But if you take out the spawner first, you risk losing all of the enemies on the main platform that you need to throw at the Mini-Merv and the button. And on top of that, the throw is a pretty slow move that also doesn't allow Patrick to do any type of attacks or jumps while moving with it. So you not only need to manage your throws carefully, but also be quick with them, or else you may get hit with all the enemies on the platform. And only then could you move on to the final TV in order to finish the level. Right off the bat, once we make it through the final road to Shell City, we encounter Dennis. A character who has been hanging over this game's story like a dark cloud has finally come to collect his bounty from Plankton.
Hello, boys. Who are you?
Your worst nightmare.
Which leads us into the second boss fight of the game. Dennis will jump off this main platform, so the only way to reach him is to naturally throw something at him. The first phase isn't too bad, as you're only hitting him with the throw fruit, as he swings SpongeBob to hit toilet bowls at you, which is just a very creative attack all around. The second phase is where the heat gets turned up a little bit, because you start to realize how tiny this main platform is, so Dennis will not only be throwing toilets at you, but also spinner enemies.
And since Patrick's throw can be a little slow, you might feel incentivized to throw one of the enemies, but you also have to stun them first while avoiding their attack and avoiding the toilets and managing all of this on a tiny platform. And when you get to the final phase, you gotta do all of that, but with a second spinner now.
So you not only have to stun the enemies, hopefully you stunned both, because if you only stunned one, by the time you pick it up, the other spinner enemy will probably already be there to hit you. Not only do you have to maneuver around this, but also the toilets being thrown on the platform, which are creating a wave of gas, and since you can't jump while holding an enemy, you're going to have to be very proactive in hitting Dennis, as he's still jumping around. All of this needing to be done on this tiny platform.
This is a quick fight, but it's definitely a challenging one.
Unless you upgraded your star spin where you could just deflect the toilets being thrown at you, which I was not aware of. But that all doesn't matter because the entire atmosphere changes when Bigger Boot shows up. A boot that is attached to the guardian of Shell City, the Cyclops. In the meantime, the boys enter a dream of the Goofy Goober.
Only Goofy Goober knows the way out of Gooberland, the sea bottom's nuttiest place.
And this portion of the game never really sat well with me as a kid. And it's not because it's bad. You know, it's another driving level. Driving level's pretty based. But when I was little, I had this weird thing with immersion where every level in the game had to be in the movie at some point. Like with 3,000 Miles to Shell City, I know they don't destroy radio towers in the movie, but they still go through a desert. So it's like, okay. But at no point do we see SpongeBob and Patrick dreaming about the Goofy Goober. So I was like, get it out of here. That's not for me. But you know, as an adult now, it's cool to see developers take liberties like that. Developers want to add more context to scenes and flesh out the levels a little bit. And you know, if they could use resources, which helps them with time, while also adding context that fits, that's pretty cool.
The name of the game for this level is to keep up with the Goofy Goober.
While these missions don't usually have a lot of danger to them, the level objective really makes that danger feel much more real. Because now, you gotta keep up with the Goofy Goober. He's not slowing down for you or anything like that. He has a set speed, so every obstacle that gets in your way is more dangerous because you can't take this at your own pace anymore. You gotta be at that finish line at a specific time.
And this level does not make that task simple for you. Your biggest challenge here is going to be these little candy balls. There are just straight up sections where they're going to be right in your path and they're going to halt wherever you need to go. And again, the invincibility you have doesn't last very long. So there's going to be portions where the game just feels like it's toying with you. If you're able to get through all that, welcome to the ending of lap 3, where the Goofy Goober takes a detour through a water slide, which is cute and it's fun, but it's slippery and it has a lot of turns, so it's very possible that you could get caught up, lose the Goofy Goober, and redo the entire mission on the end of the last lap. But if you just barely made it through, there's also this incredibly sharp turn, which is meant to slow you down, and even trying to cut it close faces you with a pile of TNT barrels. In the end, we never do catch that Goofy Goober, unfortunately, but we do catch a Goofy Goober token, which actually leads me to question the Goofy Goober tokens in this level. Since we're in a dream sequence, they're not tangible, right? So how would they count towards what Mindy can contain? It's a video game. Anyway, this happens just in time for SpongeBob and Patrick to awake from their slumber. As we slowly awake from the dream, we realize that we've actually made it to Shell City. So have we been sleepwalking? Did we actually run into Shell City before falling asleep? What's going on here? It is then when we realize that Shell City is in reality a gift shop. And the Cyclops, its guardian, is the owner, who runs a store full of Google Eyes and smelly knickknacks.
This is Shell City? What a horrible place! But don't worry, there must be a way out.
The act of escaping Shell City is actually a sliding level. Similar to Rub-a-Dub-Dub's Slip Slide in the Tub, this level has the similar goal of affecting the level based on hitting into certain objects. In this case, we're activating faucets to not only save the other sea creatures in Shell City, but also opening up paths for us to take. Although the sea creatures are, oh boy. The way we turn these faucets, however, are by riding around these colored pipes that the faucets are attached to. And what's great is that they're all tangled up in this giant maze-like level.
Which admittedly can lead to some confusion at times.
When you do turn a faucet, it's not always the clearest to know where to go. So you either ride around on all the available pipes, seeing where each one takes you, or you could just fall off the stage and get reset, being shown where the next path is. This hasn't stopped the game before of halting your progress to show you where to go next, but the pipes in this level are very slim and have a lot of turns, so maybe the developers thought it'd be a little too jarring to go from cutscene to gameplay. Which in turn adds a lot of challenge to this level in terms of just staying on the track. But that's not all this level has to offer. As you're clipping the crown through the pipe, you also have the Cyclops showing up as set pieces and obstacles to block your path. And when you finally do turn all these faucets around, you have to now knock down all of the lamps hanging down from the ceiling, where you have to ride each lamppost, reaching higher and higher to the ceiling until you finally are able to escape through a nearby window, leaving Shell City. However, even though we escaped Shell City, that doesn't mean we're back in Bikini Bottom, which means time is still of the essence here. Luckily, we have to help us return the crown.
Unidentified object off the hind quarters!
Bigger boot? But how?
With Dennis peeling off of the bottom, it is time to take him out one more time. But not before Patrick just completely ditches you. In the movie, he's smacked away, but here, he knows what he did. Look at that smile on my man's face. Ironically, this battle with Dennis honestly seems to be the lesser challenging one for me. Besides occasionally taking a couple enemies out, which funnily enough are the enemies from the Thug Tug, my man did not just beat up the owner, he took the entire club over and put those boys to work. But they don't have any projectiles, and with Dennis only throwing a straight line of knives, all you really have to do is stay on Dennis's tail and throw the bowling ball at him. And if you upgraded the sponge bowl, you have a bigger area of effect. And then, you know, at the end of the level, there's the cutscene where Dennis gets knocked off. But then there's another cutscene where Dennis, once again, gets knocked away. And they even show the beginning of the fight as well. So, I don't know. I mean, okay.
But I think I'm being a little too harsh here. After all, I think I'm missing out on the piece de resistance to this level.
This whole battle takes place completely on back, and in the movie, he just had to deal with a simple knife. Now there's multiple knives, crowbars, and a bowling ball that can potentially be spiked and full of electricity next to an ocean. And he also was given a lot of care by the developers with those back hair textures. I mean, man, they just programmed an entire patch of grass onto him, didn't they?
But speaking of grass, I think it's now time to take on Plankton's army.
But this time, it's not the family making up that grass, it is all of his bucket-headed minions as we finally reach Planktopolis. Okay, I'm not getting caught off guard this time. I know it's a 3D platforming level. I know we're gonna need some Goofy Goober tokens. The last one was only 25. We got a couple levels before this one, so this can't be too many.
Okay, look, it's the last 3D platforming level. It's the last Goofy Goober requirement, obviously. They obviously want to set it off with a bang. Okay. Let's see what we can scrape up.
Okay, the sliding and driving levels have one more Goofy Goober token. Let's see what we got here. So these are the Macho Time challenges, and they are, as you would expect, a more difficult version of the time challenges. But it's also the middle ground between a nice, relaxing drive and a nitro-filled, shortcut-fueled, desperate sprint to the finish. And even if you make it there, it'll most likely be accomplished within seconds of the required time.
These time trials are insane. And they're truly gonna push your knowledge of these tracks to the test.
Like, look at this. Regardless, though, we've finally beaten those Macho Time challenges, and now we can finally break through Plankton's forces.
Plankton's bucket heads are being controlled by those statues. If we destroy them, we can break his control over them.
This level starts by equipping SpongeBob with his final ability, the Sonic Wave. And when upgraded, it turns into that famous Goofy Goober guitar. This attack is a homing projectile, which brings you into a first-person point of view, with the upgraded version now having homing properties, and that will be very helpful when you fight the final repeating enemy, the Merv. You know, we got Big Brother here. Not only packing that proximity laser, but now shooting missiles from above at you. This is why upgrading abilities are so important, because being able to reflect the Popper and the Merv are literally gonna save you in this level.
But with these reflections being so precise, you start to notice that SpongeBob's spin attack has a bit of a weird hitbox.
It doesn't feel like it's just a solid circular hitbox around him, but instead it follows the gloves itself, which means if you're trying to time the reflection correctly, you'll need to stand sideways because that's where SpongeBob's arms start out. And like,
And if these enemy encounters aren't enough, you also have to remember that this is a platforming level. And I really want to highlight that topic by letting you know about the first building you enter in this level.
after taking out a bunch of enemies, you'll then see that you have to make use of SpongeBob's wall jump, which is a passive ability he's had throughout the game. However, this wall jump has to be done while also dodging a rising electrical current. Then you have to make it across a couple breakable platforms, which are separated by steam cannons, so you have to wait, but also not wait at the same time. Then you have to wall jump a wall that is stationary and a wall that is moving. Then we have to do another wall jump around an electrical current, although this one goes up and down, so even if you dodge it, the current is gonna come right back at you.
Then you remember that this is a vertically structured platforming section.
Which means that at any point, if you fall off, you'll have to do the entire section over again. That's only about the first half of the level. Throughout this stage, you'll be fighting these giant Plankton statues, which are terrifying, and on one occasion, getting to one involves an above lava platforming section, which there are bouncing platforms, treadmill tracks, in which you need to stay on that platform in order to perform a slow sponge bowl or sonic wave, which presses a button that starts the next section of platforming. Oh, and almost all of the platforms have an electrical current running through them. Even the bouncing platforms. Like, How are you gonna put it on a bouncing platform? That's supposed to be like the transitional platform. Then, once you finally get to the final Plankton statue, he shoots fireballs at you and electrifies one of the 2 treadmill platforms. And again, the electric guitar isn't very fast, so I hope you positioned yourself carefully. That finally takes us to the end of the level. Okay, but that was the last 3D platforming challenge. 2 levels left. One of them is a driving level. Driving levels are usually pretty chill. Let's see what...
So, overall, the movie game is a pretty short game, all things considered. If you took out all of the Goofy Goober token requirements, you would probably be able to finish this game in a couple hours. So that's why we have the Goofy Goober tokens, to lengthen the game for the player by giving them roadblocks on occasion, which isn't a new thing to video games, and it isn't even necessarily a bad thing. But the problem here is the frequency of it.
There are, once again, 18 levels in this game, with 7 of those levels requiring Goofy Goober tokens, which means that you're going to be getting stopped 7 times throughout the game. And that doesn't sound like a big deal, but again, the game isn't very long. There are a lot of boss fights, sliding, and driving levels. However, they're shorter levels compared to 3D platforming levels, which means that even though they don't make up too many levels in the game, you're still going to be getting to them fairly quickly. So the amount of times the game is asking you to stop and go back feels like a lot more, because the 3D platforming levels take more time.
But that doesn't change the fact that the functionality of the Goofy Goober tokens are unfortunately a lot more tedious than they need to be.
And that whole discussion doesn't even take into account that the final Goofy Goober token isn't even for an ability in a 3D platforming level. It's for the return of the paddy wagon. And like, Mindy, how did you even manage that? Where did you go? I could see why you went up 10 Goofy Goober tokens from the previous level, but also 10 Goofy Goober tokens from the previous level. You just went up 15 Goofy Goober tokens in the level before this one. Why?
But, you know, we do have to beat the game, so what else are we gonna do?
Now, the best part about returning to earlier levels from here is that we have all these new abilities that can get us Goofy Goober tokens in levels as far back as I'm Ready Depression. And with SpongeBob's new ability, we can do challenges based on his sonic wave, but, okay. So, you remember the very precise ring challenges in the sliding and driving levels? Well, now we're gonna do that with a first-person missile. And, you know, earlier on, they're not too bad. And then there's, Shell City Dead Ahead. A very, very long trial and error mission, which is just what I needed at this time in the game. But once we have obtained all 50 Goofy Goober tokens, we can now begin the preliminary level to the final boss, Drive of the Knucklehead-McSpazitron, which is a cute little reference.
You're almost home, guys. All you have to do now is make it to the Krusty Krab. You'll have to go as fast as you can to avoid the falling debris.
Overall, there's definitely a dip in stakes compared to the last level, which would make sense as now you're heroically making it to your final destination. And that doesn't mean that the game doesn't try to make that heroic feeling even stronger by implementing traps that will straight up end the mission for you if you're not fast enough. But unfortunately, this is all happening with the normal driving soundtrack in the background, which is a wonderful song, but it definitely takes away from the intensity of the situation. I need to relax. This level does have a lot of fun to it. There's the classic sliding through the water, there's all the fun jumps you can make, and one of those jumps even breaks you through a wall. And speaking of jumps, there's this big one that lands you right in front of the Krusty Krab, which is the perfect introduction to the final level, where our heroes make it just in time for the final battle with Plankton and his newly acquired bucket head, King Neptune.
It's one of Plankton's bucket hats. Plankton is controlling King Neptune.
That's right. And now I'll have the pleasure of removing you along with your friends. Neptune, I command you to kill SpongeBob! Kill SpongeBob!
The goal of the fight is to take all of the tables surrounding King Neptune and spin it so that they are now facing him. Once all the tables are turned around, you'll need to wait for King Neptune to go into a first-person mode and fire one of his beams at you. When this happens, you have to stand behind Mr. Krabs, who will reflect the beam across all of the different tables so that they eventually turn around on King Neptune himself, which stuns him and opens him up to an attack from the sonic wave.
Which, admittedly, is a bit of a complicated way to just attack the boss, but again, it's the final boss of this game, so it checks out.
The first phase involves King Neptune locking onto you with his trident, shooting out a beam of fire. However, the beam is fast enough so that in like a second or two, it will be in your position, which means this fight is beaten by basically playing jump rope. And you need to dodge every round of his attacks, which means if you get hit, those rounds start over. The second phase starts turning that dial up a couple notches. King Neptune's trident now hosts a laser beam, which is shot down at the floor, creating a giant circular wave-patterned attack. And if you thought it was going to be simple, like the first phase, you know, play a little jump rope, another beam is added on top of it, going left and right. So you have to face multiple waves of energy beams going in different directions. And we're not even on phase 3 yet. King Neptune throws his trident into the floorboards to a phase where you must platform around attacks while also platforming around a stage while also interacting with certain objects on different platforms. And now we have two flingers who are adding more attacks. Oh.
Oh man, that was an adventure, man. That was a really absorbing adventure.
That kind of stuff is uncalled for.
So the main discussion surrounding this game, besides its, obvious connection to SpongeBob, is something we touched on in the beginning of the video and talked about basically throughout it: the difficulty of this game. But where do you even begin with discussing what it means for a game to be difficult? And I feel like the best place to start here is with the enemies that they offer.
There are so many different enemies in this game that all attack very differently. And because of that, SpongeBob and Patrick have a lot of abilities in order to deal with those enemies. So with all of these tools at your disposal, the enemies are able to craft level designs that combine challenge of the enemy to challenge of the environment.
So once the main hazards of the game are established, the question then becomes if the developers are willing to push those hazards past the point of their basic functionality, to enter in this realm of actually pushing back against the player. And yeah, there's a lot of examples of that in this game.
In early as I'm Ready Depression, the game will create these environments where a spawner will shoot out enemies that you need to take out and creatively find a way to get to that spawner in order to stop the enemy horde. This grows so much that by the time you get to Shell City Dead Ahead, you have a larger variety of enemies with 2 different spawners further away with mini-mervs blocking them.
But a lot of this design structure of building and building and building can eventually overwhelm the player and start to feel a little unfocused to some. And that can also stick out in a negative way.
I think the biggest example of this is in the combat arena challenges, where literally it's just a single platform with hordes that can continue up to 50 enemies all attacking you in a singular session. While I personally enjoy these challenges, the challenge can begin to feel a lot more like it's simply made to overwhelm the player rather than actually crafting a strategic challenge to overcome.
Then, that can begin to snowball. You'll have a player that sees a challenge here, and they'll say, well, the fight here is very similar to one I fight in the main game. So if you have that here and there, you could start to believe that, well, is the whole challenge of this game based on this same idea?
I personally disagree with this. Most of the time, the enemies are there to fill a separate role, or they're there to be used as tools in order to overcome a fight.
But I do understand that at times the difficulty can feel overwhelming. And if a game feels overwhelming like that, then what is the structured challenge here?
You start to question that if the game is so challenging to the point where it sticks out amongst a line of pretty relaxing games, was that challenge actually intended, or is the game just poorly designed?
And that idea is pushed even further when you realize that the game was potentially rushed.
A lot of these feelings come from, well, just straight up what you see in the game. There are times where the models can look a little unpolished, and Mindy, man, that is a puppet jaw if I've ever seen one. Patrick, I guess that tongue swinging caught up to him because his tongue is just straight up glued to the top of his mouth. There is some pop-in lighting issues, and no cheese, the NPCs don't even animate, and there's even a glitch on the loading screen where sometimes it just won't load.
And look, full disclosure, you all say it, I played this on the GameCube version. The GameCube version is notoriously known to be the worst version of the game, and I know that some of the stuff I said stems from GameCube version issues and isn't in other parts of the game. I don't know how far the GameCube issues really reach, but even if everything I just listed is a GameCube specific issue, I still think there are other parts of the game that can hint to a potentially rushed development.
A big reason is the cutscenes, man, and I mean, I don't know how movie deals work. I don't know if they just provided them with storyboard images, or maybe it was just really early so that there wasn't a whole lot to go off of. I don't know, but there's also just a lot of instances where they just used stock art. Like Mr. Krabs, they just took his arm away. The in-game cutscenes themselves are fine, although there isn't a lot of difference in animation when the characters are just talking to each other. But the game was built off of the previous game, Battle for Bikini Bottom, so they carried over a lot of stuff, including these talking animations. In fact, you would think because this game takes a lot from the previous game, the development issues wouldn't be a big deal. Both games were made by Heavy Iron Studios, and only released a year apart from each other. So maybe the movie game just had a way shorter development cycle than Battle for Bikini Bottom. Plus, if you look at their order of released games, the movie game was the first game to come out in a year that Heavy Iron also released another game, which actually kind of makes sense as to why the intro to the game thematically looks so similar to both.
Now, I know in cases like this, games are developed under different teams, but maybe since it was Heavy Iron's first one, even though they split up the teams, they still impacted each other's development, potentially making the 1-year development for this game even more strenuous. And listen, I'm not a game developer. I don't know anything about the development of this game or how anything goes behind the scenes, but, you know, just pure speculation. If the game was rushed, you know, that could potentially be a reason. And another reason why I think the game could have been rushed is with those Goofy Goober tokens, man.
So as we spoke about with Goofy Goober tokens previously, it really does come across like a way for the developers to make the game longer. Since if you were able to beat this game without any token requirements, you could probably get through this pretty quickly. Now again, there are 18 levels in this game, but a lot of them are sliding or driving levels. And even though you go through those levels quicker than you would a 3D platforming level, that doesn't mean those levels necessarily have less resources in them. These driving and sliding levels have a lot of detail put into them, potentially as much detail as you would a 3D platforming level. But since you go through them so quickly, all of that development time spent on creating these levels is quickly bypassed by the player. Which means if most of the levels had a similar amount of effort put into them in terms of designing them, about half of them have significantly less time dedicated to them because of the fast-paced nature of the driving and sliding. So the way to work around that is with the creation of the Goofy Goober tokens. By being told to go back and complete tasks in previous levels, you're not only giving the 3D levels more areas to flesh the level out, but you're also making players spend more time in those quickly passed through driving and sliding levels.
The problem is that there aren't many challenges you could do for a driving or sliding level that doesn't traditionally feel like they would be extra modes to play if you felt like it, or bonus content. And in terms of bonus content, most of the Goofy Goober tokens in the game aren't required in terms of which ones you need to complete in order to meet the next objective. And because you could technically get to the next objective without completing a certain Goofy Goober token, the developers can treat those Goofy Goober tokens as if they were bonus content.
So a lot of the ring challenges, the manly time challenges, the sponge ball levels, the floating block challenges, and the combat arena challenges can all have their difficulties cranked up higher than you would find even in the main game, because you technically don't need to beat them in order to complete the game. But with the Goofy Goober requirements, you do need to complete some of them. There are 68 Goofy Goober tokens obtainable in this game, with 52 being your final number at the end of the game. That means you have to play about 3/4 of this game to beat it, which to an extent means you'll have to play these more challenging levels. So you add together the main game's difficulty, the backtracking you have to do once you finally overcome that level, those optional Goofy Goober tokens with increased difficulty that you now have to complete, and the potential that this game could have been rushed and unpolished, and you have a SpongeBob game that doesn't really feel like any other SpongeBob game.
SpongeBob games, in my experience at least, have been mainly pretty relaxing games, so it can give you a whiplash effect when you get to this one.
So because of that, the difficulty in this game and where it stands in this series can be looked at either as a product of rushed and unpolished development, or a sequel to a very similar game that steps up the challenge to meet its more experienced player base.
There is no right or wrong answer, of course. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. And for me, man, I love this game, man.
I get the complaints, I really do, but I cannot get around the fact that they made a SpongeBob game that is just so challenging, man. There's so much depth to what you can do in this game. There's so many tools at your disposal here as SpongeBob and Patrick, and they both genuinely feel like equally capable characters.
And on top of that, all of the charm that this game has packed into it.
And that charm starts right out of the gate in the menu. There are those classic quotes.
That's my favorite line ever.
The Goofy Goober puns, and the game passively aggressively tempting you to challenge a Goofy Goober token. The music, man. Oh my gosh, I love music in video games, and this game does not disappoint. With some of my favorite tracks being the one that plays in Sandwich Driving 101. And, of course, the complete insanity of I'm Ready Depression. And this the stages where all of those songs play in, there's so much charm packed into these. I didn't even get to talk that much about the level themes. To go back to I'm Ready Depression, it's just so fun being in a world filled with candy. I always remember the little echo and the frigid atmosphere of the ice cream room. Then, of course, you get to Shell City Dead Ahead that has the heavy iron license plate on it. And in Welcome to Planktopolis Minions, they added little character cameos from Sandy and I'm not quite sure who that is. Also, all the extras packed into this game. I wasn't completely sure where to add them, but they're so well implemented here. Every extra you grab gives you something new. Some of these are insane to get though. I did not want to look anything up for this game, but I spent potentially hours in 3,000 miles to Shell City, and I just couldn't find the last one. And I did not know that you had to break all of these boxes at once in order to get it. And it was kind of a moment for me where I was like, okay, I don't feel too bad for not finding that, because I didn't know they were going to be that cryptic. And some of these get really cryptic. I would still be looking. Like, what is this?
But I think the biggest reason that this game sticks out to me so much is the way it's aged.
Yes, there are a lot of things with this game that I personally feel like could hinder the experience, mainly like the goofy goober token system.
But it really isn't enough to stop me from enjoying this game, especially as an adult. You know, I'm at a point in my life where, as corny as it sounds, I'm growing up, you know, I'm an adult, and I'm at that stage in my life where change is really, really hitting me. You know, to not only be independent on my own, but also to be responsible for other people and other commitments I have in my life. It could really be scary sometimes. So a way over the last few years I've really found comfort was through my childhood. You know, I'm not trying to relive it or anything like that, but it makes me happy. You know, it's not stressful. It's kind of like a world you could really just get lost in for a little bit. So to go back and play video games from my childhood, mainly SpongeBob games, they're all usually very similar in terms of the challenge you can expect from it. Not a lot of games are willing to push back against what you would expect from a license-based game. And the fact that this game does do that makes it so much more special to me, because I could have that nostalgic connection to it from when I was a kid, but, you know, also keep me engaged in a different way in terms of the challenge it offers. make you sit up in your seat a little bit. And that's just really special and cool to me. You know, I was on the school bus one day. It was like elementary school, and I guess when you're a kid, like, your circle of like what games to play, what shows to watch is really small. So I guess I just assumed everyone had this game. So I just asked a random friend of mine on the bus, who I did not know had it, mind you, if they've beaten it. And they said they did. And that was like the craziest thing to me. Like, whoa, you conquered this? And it's just really silly looking back of like how big a deal it was to beat this game. But even beating it as an adult now, I still feel a really fun sense of accomplishment. And I think feelings like that is why this game continues to be brought up so much. And everyone deserves a game like that, man. So I hope whatever game you guys are playing right now, it's bringing you as much joy as the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game did for me. I don't know what that was. Alright, another SpongeBob game in the books, and I mean, it took a while, and I'm sorry, I know I upload like rarely, and I'm sorry for that, but thank you guys for always sticking around. I really appreciate that. I know I said I wanted to look at the Unite series after the Revenge of the Flying Dutchman video, But I also wanted to give you guys the choice too. See, what would you guys rather see? So I put up a poll, and a lot of people wanted to see more SpongeBob. So I hope that's okay. And just speaking of the Flying Dutchman video, thank you guys so much for all of the love you guys sent towards it. Like, oh my gosh, it's incredible. Thank you so much. Like, that, it really means the world for me. And if you guys want to see more SpongeBob stuff, like, I want to give you guys that. I want to give you what you guys want to see, and you know, I'd be more than happy than make more videos about SpongeBob. But that doesn't mean I don't ever want to talk about other Nickelodeon games. I still 100% want to do a Nicktoons Unite video, and I will say that even though, like, I just said that whole thing about SpongeBob, the next type of, like, sit-down discussion video, I have a Nickelodeon series that I have been meaning to talk about for a year or two now. And I'm not going to, I want to talk about Nick All-Star Brawl. That game meant a lot to me. And actually, this Plankton thing was actually a cosplay I wore to a tournament, which, oh my goodness. I'm so happy I was able to get some more use out of it. I can't wait to bring you guys more videos. I can't wait to bring you guys more. Whether it's Nickelodeon, whether it's Fire Emblem, whether it's, I want to make a Sonic video. I'm rambling again. Have a great night, guys. Thank you so very much for watching. I'll see you guys soon.